how that information translates into your lesson planning. How does that information translate into the way in which you build your classroom environment? How does it, like, the students themselves are so focal, obviously, to our jobs, and working with what we have, utilizing their strengths, including them always, is going to be the best way to, inspire them in the classroom, engage them, to reach them. So I'm gonna bring up for you, I know it says domain 1, but this is just the review, because we will be moving into just really deep diving into domain 3, which includes standard 1, standard 3, and technology application standards 1 through 7. So let's get started. There we go. So, like I was saying before, getting to know your students, right? Creating a inclusive classroom by making instructional and management modifications based on your particular and specific knowledge of your students, where they are. Oh, Stephanie loves to read and she likes to, write poems. So I might, even if I'm a math teacher, try to include that somehow in my class, like trying to find ways in which students can shine and be excited about the learning, like tying those things, marrying what they're interested in and what they need to know. People often, especially some of the older teachers that I used to work with when I started teaching in 2003, would get really upset when you had to put in so much effort, I suppose, because before you really didn't have to. You didn't have to accommodate so specifically to the English language learners. Not in a math class, not in well, you do now, because that's the way that they learn, and this is the way in which everyone, can achieve those goals, and they can achieve acquisition of that language much more quickly, with the support of all of the educators on campus. But so they would say, like, well, I have to be like this, entertainer, or try to make it fun. And like, yes, you do. I mean, you don't have to be a comedian or an entertainer, but you certainly have to take your audience, because you do have an audience, into consideration. Like any speaker trying to motivate someone or teach someone, you have to take the audience into consideration. Are they going to learn from this particular lesson? And if the answer is no, then you need to adjust, right? And just make those modifications based on your specific understanding of your student. I wanted to read for you a little, excerpt from What Teachers Make. He says, that's what teaching is: the art of explanation, presenting the right information in the right order in a memorable way. And it's not like you're gonna have to do it for each and every individual. Just taking them all into consideration holistically, you can find ways of engaging them. The teacher's job is to sort through all those explanations and examples before class and to present the ones that work best, and then perhaps to leave off the last step so that the students can make connections for themselves. So you are providing them with ample examples and understanding definitions and visuals, and leaving the last bit of work for them to build that last little bridge, right? So presenting it in a way that is meaningful to them. And we know that best practice is more student-centered, right? But everybody needs direct instruction. There's never going to be a scenario in which students don't need direct instruction. In fact, when students are struggling and need remediation, they often do benefit from more direct instruction so they can build their knowledge, right, base before being let to do other other things on their own. So creating a classroom environment that promotes positive behavior and that enhances students' learning. So we have to know our students, the good, the bad. There is no bad, but there are difficulties, right? Because as I've said many, many times, these are little humans, and some of them come from homes that are, and not even all of them are like abusive situations, but if you have two very successful parents and their work all the time, you might be a little bit neglected or have attention seeking behaviors. We see it all the time when we do meet with parents, and then we sort of kind of can piece together what's going on here and how best we can help them. You have to create an environment that is stable, that is predictable, because a lot of students don't have this in their life. That is stable, that is predictable, that is safe, where you're not going to be bullied. Nobody's going to make fun of you in here because Miss Sauceda only likes kindness. So somebody better stop. So building that for your students, very important. And we discussed that last time. But that diversity, you can have all sorts of diversity. Difference in age, right? Developmental difference, cognitive area. You could have different levels of cognitive ability and development. Physical area, learning styles, gender, sexual orientation, language, culture, diversity, exceptionalities, like their skills and how, man, so many of them are exceptional. And I'll give you an example of a time where I used it. I would shudder to think that no one, I mean, I wouldn't expect for anyone to say no, but I had a student who, instead of turning in, because at the end of the year, it's for a big grade and they have to keep up their dialectical journal. It's something that we do all year long, and I grade it throughout the year. And, we make entries together, doing kinesthetic stuff like foldables, taking notes, having them do group work together, but everything is logged there, either glued or taped or stapled or written directly into the dialectical journal. So it's kind of like the English Bible is what they called it at the end of the year. And I had some high school students say that they took it with them to college because it had all the specifics that sort of don't change, like the types of sentences and ways in which, definitions of like particular things and other reflections on readings. And one of my students, and this was like in 2011 or 10, maybe. And iPads were a thing already, but he wanted to do his dialectical journal on his iPad. Like he wanted to make so the foldables and stuff like that, he would have to find a way to like visually represent. If it was a 3-tab foldable, he couldn't just have like what is the word? Like a Word document where he just wrote notes. Like I would not have accepted that. What he turned in was like a digital textbook, and it blew my mind. I already knew that he was very tech savvy. His father was in technology, and I think even ran like the internet for the district. So he was like very tech savvy and would often help me with my stuff and give me like, oh, this is a really great app for this particular thing that I was trying to achieve. Like, so I knew that was an exceptionality, and I said, go for it. If you think you could do something like tantamount to what this product is, you certainly can. And it was amazing. I mean, there were videos, there were like tab pulls out where you like hover and it changes the fonts to show you what was underneath the tab. Very cool. And I don't know how he did it, but those exceptionalities, we should be investigating what they are. All students have them. Little quirks that they're geniuses about, and utilizing that so that they can learn more and become more amazing. So if I had said no to that student and been like, no, everybody has to turn in the physical DJ, no, we're not gonna blah blah blah, he would have never pushed himself to go above and beyond. And he learned all those things. He had to type them in, he had to look up particular videos. He probably knew those definitions and those concepts that we had within there probably better than the other students with the amount of time he put in to making all of that come together. And I'm sure he reviewed every page over and over again, because I know that's how I am when I create something. I'm like looking at them over and over and over and over. So utilize all of them and look at our students, not like from a deficit perspective. They aren't lacking in anything except for love, attention, and support, right? And we are there to provide that to them. They have students that are at risk, labeled at risk of falling, behind for reasons outside of themselves, socioeconomic status, ability or disability. So there are so many ways in which our students are different. And I wanted to talk really quickly about why I like, and I'm going to write this here for you guys. I did press record, right? Okay, yeah, just making sure. I often forget, and then I'm like, man, that was a good class. I'm like, oh, good Lord. It did not tape. Okay, I'm going to do that. So because we're scientists dealing with the most complex of subjects, which is growing, burgeoning human beings, right? Through different stage of cognitive, physical, emotional development, coming from different backgrounds, different home lives, different experiences, all of it. And they all have to master and or achieve the goal that we set for them, regardless of difference. And so given that, and given that we cannot write a lesson that is tailored to, these kids and these kids and these kids, and like all these different lessons just for one concept. No, I really like the universal design for learning. UDL. It is by far my favorite lesson plan model. Universal. And I don't know why this is in red. Design for learning. And I'm going to change this to white. Maybe. Okay. Can anyone tell me why I might like you? If you've been working on your courses, you should have completed in the beginning, in the intro courses, several different types of lesson plans, just so that you can see the 5E model, Madeline Hunter. You have a UDL assignment. UDL is by far my favorite. Universal, what does that mean? Universal. Say, I mean, even the title just says it all. What does universal mean?
Teaching all.
Right, it's for all. Thank you.
For all.
Everybody. Yes. Universal means everybody. Everybody learns. The universal design for learning. Everybody learns. And the UDL was actually designed for and by, it's for engineering. And I'm gonna just clear my drawings just really quickly. And then, oh good Lord. Sorry guys, my mouse is being weird. It won't move. Oh, there it is. oh, I like this guy. I really like this guy. But hopefully he says it here.
As I'm in the midst of applying for residency right now, wish me luck. Grammarly has again been a lifesaver with my application.
I love Grammarly.
Hello and welcome to Teachings in Education. In this video, you will learn everything you ever wanted to know about universal design for learning. Let's begin with the question of why should educators use a universal design for learning? The purpose of UDL is to provide all students, regardless of their background, with an equal opportunity to learn and succeed in the classroom.
That's why it's my favorite. It's the one that makes it easiest for me as an educator to make sure I provided all those different pathways to success, right? An equal opportunity, universally designed to be applicable and helpful, beneficial, effective for all kids, regardless.
UDL approach must serve the needs of each classroom's diverse group of learners, regardless of the student's cultural background, race, socioeconomic status, gender, language ability, reading, writing, or math proficiency, and even the student's motivation. This approach will empower both students and educators. Now, let's look at some specific benefits of UDL. First off, students are individuals, and some have specific barriers to learning. UDL curriculum designs aim to help students get around those barriers. Still,
and so the universal design for learning was created when engineers and architects sort of talked to educators, and they were like, well, we needed to do something like that in the classroom. They had a universal design for architecture and engineering. If they are making in a city a walkway, a new walkway, they have to make sure everyone in the city can use the walkway, which means they would have to remove potential barriers or provide alternatives so that the same goal is achieved, that people can utilize this area of town, utilize this building. So the universal design was, in architecture and building, a way in which you could be thoughtful about your design so that there were limited barriers for people so that everyone could utilize the new place or system.
the approach incorporates assessments, lessons, and objectives that are both challenging and at the same time achievable for each student. This in turn will increase student engagement. Educators are empowered and able to enhance their curriculum for the benefit of their students. Enhanced curriculum includes new technology, exciting lessons, and added materials. Other than removing barriers, UDL should also build on student strength. Too often, educators spend all of their time focusing on deficiencies.
What did we just talk about a little while ago? I don't want for you to view our beautiful human, kids, the little ones that are burgeoning, amazing people to be later. Look at them from a strengths perspective. Don't just think of them from a deficit. What can't they do? What can they do? And how can we use those strengths and build on them and use those strengths to build on some of their weaknesses as well, but really focusing on their strengths.
As opposed to accentuating student positives. On to the next section, which is the 3 guiding principles of UDL. The first principle is offering multiple ways to represent content. Besides just using a textbook, offer audio content, video to view, news articles, and more options. The second principle is to allow students to express their mastery of content. A teacher may allow some students to take a paper test and other students can do an oral presentation. The third principle is providing various ways to motivate and engage students to learn. Consider game-based learning, gamification, culture studies, the language experience approach. Next, let's take a practical look at how to incorporate UDL in the classroom. Choice assignments are one staple of a UDL classroom. Not only do students feel a sense of
and what do I say? Give them options, agency. Like UDL makes it your life a lot easier because it forces you to do all of the best practices that we know are going to be important for the students to continue to be engaged, right? Part of that motivation is being able to choose, to have agency and to choose based on your strengths, your interests, your everything, your personhood.
Autonomy. They feel more obligated to complete the assignment because they chose it.
Yes.
Next, teachers need a variety of materials on hand. For this reason, it's important to get department chairs and school principals on board to help secure supplies. Flexible assessment is another key.
For the purposes of your exam, you have all of the variety of supplies. Remember this, like in a perfect world scenario, Utopia ISD, you wouldn't even have to have a conversation about what resources you have. And if you did right away, they'd be given to you because this is going to be like a perfect world scenario for the exam. But if you know you do need more stuff, I often went to my department head every year and said, what's the budget for like classroom libraries? Like I wanted to know what books I could buy for my students. I already knew what their interests were, and I was ready to put some books on my shelf that I knew they particularly wanted to read. And so I did it many times, hundreds of dollars, like probably a lot more than that. Me buying my own, like if I felt that they wanted something, or some students said, no, none of these books on here are interesting to me, I would say, well, what kind of a book would you want to read? And so for the purposes of the exam, you wouldn't have to go out and purchase it yourself. Like your department head should have monies available for classroom libraries, and you should absolutely be adding to them all the time with things your students want to read. So during silent sustained reading, they have choices that they actually want to read and will read.
Key component of UDL implementation. This goes back to building on student strengths and designing assessments based off of those strengths. Teachers should look to vary presentation of content. For example, not everyone has the attention for a lecture. There are many types of engaging videos on the internet as an alternative format.
Oh my God, I'm so glad he said that, because I'm just getting a little bit nervous, because I really like his videos. And I've shown them several times, but I don't think I've recorded one where I'm showing it. But it's important for you to find good resources, and there are so many, like this gentleman here. His videos are very fast. They're quick. There's like, look at the bold printing, the organization, the visuals that he provides, like all of those things make it such a great resource for me to use with you guys. Because I wanted to point out UDL today, because I feel like it covers a lot of best practices that we talk about so often in class, providing flexible, differentiated, sort of not differentiated, but diverse assessments, right? You're not just giving a paper multiple choice assessment all the time, that you are assessing them in myriad ways, and that you give them choices. If it's not about the writing, that's not the objective that I'm assessing, then I can absolutely have a conversation with you, or you could, get in groups and perform a skit that represents, instead of writing a book report. So there are many different ways. If you have kids that like acting, that like my daughters are right now writing a script for Bob's Burgers. They're 7 and 8. And on Twitter today, I saw some visual that someone posted, and it was the children from Bob's Burgers, but they were in Gravity Falls. I don't know if you're familiar with these cartoons, but it's a big deal. And so they thought that meant that there was going to be a crossover episode where these two different shows came together, and they thought it would be perfect. Well, I looked it up, and that's not what's happening. It was just a fan that drew it, a fan of both shows like they are. And so they're now writing a crossover episode in the living room on a Saturday. So kids are smart, and they like to do fun tasks, like they're over there writing by themselves. So why wouldn't I make that a choice for them to do in the classroom? Find out what they're good at, their strengths, what they're into, and find ways of incorporating that. And UDL does it almost for you, kind of, because you have to provide multiple means of representation. You have to provide multiple means of action and expression, multiple means of engagement for any area or objective that you are focusing on. So it forces you to do the best practices and make sure that you've covered all the bases. And it's why I prefer UDL over any other lesson plan design.
Also important is having supports in place for students. Identify students and their specific needs, scaffold assignments and lessons. Teachers can be supported in many ways. Right now, I'm going to take a quick break and ask that you hit that subscribe button. Also, I ask that you hit the thumbs up button and give this video a like as well. Now let's get back to it. Collaboration. The inclusion classroom is the most common place you would find implementation of universal design for learning. And that's because the collaboration can take place between the special education teacher and general education teacher. Collaboration of educators, teachers, administrators, and paraprofessionals should all be centered around shared goals and visions. Still, communication is what really drives collaboration. UDL requires open lines of communication between educators in a very professional.
And UDL demands, it forces us to do domain 4, the professional roles and responsibilities, continuing communicating with all other professionals, using the resources that we have, collaborating cross-curricular. Cross-curricular means I am cross-discipline. So I often, and it was like for selfish reasons too. And I remember my administrators used to be like, oh my goodness, you do so well. But I would go collaborate with the history. There was in PSJ North, we had hallways. And so you could just go to another hallway and all the history teachers are in there and ask the ones that had my student, what are you guys reading right now? What are y'all studying? So that I could bring in poetry or prose from that time period, but it made my life easier because they were already studying that time period. So they came to my class with background knowledge. And they were like, oh, Miss Sauceda, did you know that when this poem was written, they were doing this, this, and this? We're learning about it in Mr. Hawkins' class. Oh, okay, cool. That's awesome. And I knew already they were doing it because I knew, and they could go to their social studies class and say, oh, well, this writer wrote this. And then they could also see, because the poetry of the time, it's not just a form of art, it spoke about the time period. I mean, right now there are people in Ukraine and they're putting out poetry and it's like heartbreaking and it speaks to what they're experiencing. So they're able to see that poetry is more than just poetry. It's a symbol or reflection of the time, sometimes of the pain of the time, the joy of the time. And so they get to see it and make a deeper connection with the knowledge that we were both me and the history teacher were trying to do. So that communication is key to making your life easier and making the classroom experience more effective.
No way. The best thing to do is to create set times and places to meet and collaborate. It's easy to fall off with these set times and meetings. At these meetings, educators should work together on planning for UDL, implementing those plans, and eventually assessing the overall effects of the UDL approach. The next topic is
That's an important thing that he just kind of went quickly over, but it's also something in your professional responsibilities, you assessing the effectiveness of your lessons. You have to think about it and thinking about it together with other people and really looking at the data if you know whole departments are utilizing UDL, but seeing if you are achieving mastery, is this working and what can we do better? That reflection of how you did, of your creation of objectives, of the types of assessment is something they will most likely ask you about. You must reflect. Reflection is so important. We are trying to teach our students to self-reflect about what they learned, what they thought, and so too we need to reflect and assess our plans. Are they doing the things that we mean for them to do?
lesson planning for the UDL. One way to get started is to create a class profile and get an understanding of each student's strengths and weaknesses, their likes and dislikes, etc., and so forth. You don't want to plan a lesson without having a viable curriculum. Educators may have to audit the current curriculum and find out ways to improve the quality.
Every summer, invariably every single at the end, you know, the new teacher, not new teacher, but the back to school thing that you're, you know, before class officially begins, you're doing your planning, or you should be, you'll have someone say, oh, I finished all of my lesson plans, I turned them in for the whole year, they're done. It like they're like that was something to be proud of. But for me, I just knew that whatever it is that they had, if they delivered it on sight unseen, that it wasn't going to work for the people that they had, because they didn't even know them yet. I didn't even know them. I can have a general idea and a scope and sequence, but my lessons should be planned. The ones I'm going to be teaching, content specific, knowledge from my TEKs, I should make those after I know who they are and that I've had a class profile, which is why I always delayed starting my curriculum. And I did this even when I was a new teacher and I had principals talk to me and I explained it. Do what you feel is right and explain yourself. You know, if a principal calls you in and say, you know, I had another teacher tell me that you hadn't started with the curriculum yet. Yeah, I have not. We're not starting until next week. This whole week we're setting up our DJ and we have other assignments and things planned. But those assignments were for me to help build my class profile, for me to get to know about them. I was also assessing their skills at the same time, because those activities included them speaking to me, included them writing, including them having to find things themselves on the internet. So I was like doing a lot of assessing, a lot of gathering of data, and they still had assignments. They were still doing things and learning about each other, about classroom procedures, having those conversations about our expectations and what sort of like activities we would be doing and what sort of like behavioral expectations we need to have in place in order for us to achieve and do those activities. So lots of stuff goes on in that first week. It's not from the curriculum. No, you're right. It's not, but it's necessary for me to plan effectively for the curriculum, to effectively for my students, the students that I have. So classroom profile, very, very important for you to have a solid understanding and build that rapport, that classroom environment, that classroom community is what should be done that first week of school.
Quality.
Miss Stephanie,
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
sorry.
No.
Also, I'm glad that you mentioned that another reason why you don't want to be an early bird in that lesson planning is because they change the curriculum sometimes. They'll switch their reads on you as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely they will.
And we experienced that in third grade, and it was really hard because they had to go back and change it. Oh my gosh, it was crazy.
Right, absolutely. So, you know, it's good to be mindful, and you can certainly plan your weeks, content and get stuff started, as far as pooling, you know, resources. But even that, even those resources, because you don't know, did I pull enough, or will these things speak to the audience I have? Remember, we do have an audience, and it is our job to choose the best resources, the best activities, the best practice of those skills so that they can, you know, achieve mastery. And we can't really do that masterfully until we've met the students, at the very least had a week with them. A week is not enough, but that's all I felt, you know, bold enough to carve out for myself and for my students. But taking that week is invaluable to really getting to know who your students are, what are their strengths, you know, what are their interests, what is their skill level at reading, listening, speaking, and writing. That's very important.
Special education and general education teachers should work together to develop SMART goals for their students. SMART meaning specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. Examining any UDL.
Specific goals, measurable goals. What was the A? Accessible. You have to be able to assess them. What was the R? Let's rewind.
SMART meaning specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely.
Achievable,
Examining
realistic,
any
and
UDL
timely.
approach.
Measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. Right. SMART goals. We want for them to be able to achieve these goals. They're specific. We can measure them. They're achievable for them, developmentally appropriate and otherwise. What was the R again? Achievable, realistic, and timely. Achievable and realistic are sort of synonyms, but we get the point. We want to utilize that type of goal planning. The students need to feel confident and to build confidence by being able to achieve the goals that we set for them.
Centered lesson should have a lot of variety and different components. Lesson plans should not look the same day to day. After planning these wonderful UDL lessons, teachers need to take a look back and reflect on what worked and what did not work. And now the last section of this presentation, actual classroom examples of UDL at work. A UDL approach comes with a flexible learning environment where the teacher is always accessible. Students may be working alone or in groups, and they may be at the teacher's desk or designated areas or working independently. Lessons are multisensory in nature, meaning that they can incorporate music or visual graphics, video, or any other thing that you might like. Projects are an easy way to get new activities out for the students, and teachers can get really creative because there are so many projects out there. With these projects, there is always options to create groups. Teachers can go back to their classes, look at their student profiles, and figure out ways to design these groups.
What are some of the things that we think about when we are in fact designing groups? What's one of the things? What do we need to make sure we have a variety of what in our groups? Remember last week we talked about
kinesthetics, visuals, audios.
let me see, let me change it. I put it on white for that other one and I'm going to change it again. So let's you're talking about the different learning styles for sure, but when we create, remember, we carefully craft cooperative learning groups.
Diversity or what?
Right, we want diversity. Remember we talked about types of grouping, and there were two types. There were homogeneous and heterogeneous, and we talked about, oops, why did it do that? We talked about how one of them was totally the wrong way to go, and one of them was the right way to go. And if you do that wrong way to go type of grouping, those students that are diverse and the students learning another language will absolutely fail. Like the high failure rate, and by failure, I mean, they will not be able to master or achieve the goal. There will be no.
Is heterogeneous or?
Which one is the good type of grouping and which one is the bad type of grouping?
The good one is heterogeneous.
The good one is heterogeneous. The bad one is, and we're going to stamp it out, homo means same. And so having students be all beginners in a group, a learning group, what would that do? We had all beginner ELL students in a cooperative learning group to do a project. What would happen to the effectiveness of the group for learning activities? If they're
it will be difficult because they're all like we're trying to shelter all these students. So we want someone that has a little bit more higher so that can help those that are struggling, right?
Right. And not just to help them, but to be able to model for them. So when we are looking at our profiles, we want a difference of skill levels. Maybe you have a really good math student and you're in a math class. You're going to put some high math skills in a group. You're not going to have them all together, all the high math skills together. You want to disperse them amongst the groups. You want to disperse your ELL students with other native English speakers, having intermediate students be in a group with strong speakers, maybe some advanced high students in there because they might speak the same language and be able to translate for some of the ones that have lower proficiency in English language. So making sure you're carefully crafting the groups to be a resource to each other. Even those that, are high level skills can find, engagement in helping the students, with some of the more challenging aspects. Oh, it didn't go away completely. Let me erase that. So we want heterogeneous, where we have difference of skill level, difference of ability, difference all together.
UDL has to meet the needs of so many. It should not rely heavily on teacher-driven lecture, but rather a student-centered approach to learning. Anyway, right now, I just want to say thank you for your time. Don't forget to check out the description link below for resources.
Thank you. We're going to give them a little shout out here to all. Oops, I don't know why that happened. Why did it do that? I didn't mean to do that. I'm going to go to I thought I was already subscribed and I liked it for sure. And I'm going to just, oh, Miss Ramos left. Here she is. Teachings and education. So I love his little Bitmoji guy. I should try to use that a little bit. But lots of really, really great videos that he has, classroom activities, just a lot of great overviews of the specifics that we talk about, right? Here we talked about Bloom's taxonomy last time. We should have watched the video on that, but I encourage you to go here, subscribe to his channel, watch some of his videos on some of those areas that we discussed. So going back to our little presentation. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Miss Sauceda. No, everything is fine. This is Ms. Ramos.
Hi,
I
Ms.
really-
Ramos.
I'm really learning a lot, and it's helping me because all of these scenarios and come in our PPR. So we need to be mindset in all of this that you're explaining in order to answer correct in our scenarios that they're asking in our exam.
Right.
Thank you so much for everything and taking your time to help us.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. It really is. I honestly get so much. I miss teaching in the classroom. I was actually thinking like, I need to go back to the classroom. And right now, Texas education is going through a battle right now, you know?
Yes, it is, because I actually work for Houston ISD. I'm a witness to it.
Yeah. Right now, I mean, I follow the governor on Twitter and I'm just like sort of just disgusted. A couple of days ago, he tweeted that like public school teachers are indoctrinating students and that he literally put it on his Twitter feed that we're teaching students to hate America. And I literally train teachers and that is not what we do. So many social studies teachers, it's in the TEKS and we don't indoctrinate and you guys do so much and have to learn so much and you're so held so accountable by so many systems of like, you know, accountability via STAR testing, via just tremendous different ways. It's all transparent and accountable, the spending, the budget, and what the governor is trying to do is take that money out of public education and put it in private schools where there is no oversight, where there is no training, and they don't have to take these tests and learn Piaget's theory and Erickson's and have diversity and teach to the particular audience. So it's I kind of feel like I've taken myself out of the fight a little bit. I mean, I haven't, but I'm not on the ground level like you guys are at. You know, you guys are on the ground floor. And you know what you do day in and day out. I can think back to what I did day in and day out and know that what his description of public education has not been my experience. And teachers do a lot and they're not in there indoctrinating some crazy ideology, far from it. So I digress a little bit. I hope I don't get in trouble with the governor for speaking my truth, but I honestly, and because I had work and I do have to teach teachers and I couldn't make it out to the Capitol, but I wanted to go testify, to the House. Yeah, I think it's really important. We use our voices to speak to people. A lot of people don't understand. I find this to be very true. Just common people out in the public, they don't know all what a person has to do to even become a teacher. And you guys are vilified. You have the least paid job for the most work. You're like, you know what I'm saying? Like the amount of work you have to put in to get into the classroom and then the amount of work that you must do while you're in the classroom. And it's heart work, it's brain work, it's heart work, it's, you know, the emotional skill and maturity that teachers have to take to deal with kids that are going to be difficult because they're hurting. You know, anytime we have difficult students, it is literally because they are hurting in some form of fashion. They they don't understand the topic, or something terrible is going on in their home life that they are a child and have no control over. And I can't imagine what that must be like. Thank goodness my parents gave me stability and love and like a predictable environment, and I was able to thrive academically because I didn't have a need for those other things. And we don't all get students like that. And so what teachers make, what they do is amazing, should be acknowledged, and people need to stop sort of dunking on them, because you guys have to know and do so much with so little in the real world. And then take a test that asks you to pretend all of reality doesn't exist, and pretend that you have no restrictions, no barriers, all the support of the governor, even, and pretend that you had that for the PPR exam, but in real life you really don't. And that's not a good place to be. And I feel like Texas education is going through a fight, and I need to get back into the thick of it. And I'm thinking it means I have to be on a campus, but I don't know. I haven't decided yet.
Well, I do have a question on,
Sure.
I'm sorry to cut you off, on
Not at
the a testing strategy. So for me, when I get the material and things of that sort, and also I want to say thank you on testing strategy as far as process of elimination, when looking at the questions and the concepts of that. Thank you so much, because that helps me out. That helps my brain out so much, being dyslexic, because I will add a whole nother story into that paragraph that I read when I'm doing my test
Absolutely.
taking. I will do that. But my question to you is, what strategy do you have as far as having too much material to read and things of that sort? Because I feel like that kind of is what slows me down a little bit. So I have, like, I've downloaded like one of the books that you guys provide, and thank you for that. I don't have to buy one,
Right.
but it's so much content. And how can I break that down to where I'm not overwhelmed?
Right. And it is sort of like overwhelming if you look at it from everything that you have, and even, hold on, even everything that I have available for you here.
Mhm.
And you should have access to this.
Okay.
What I would do is, and you should do it as a project. Project is the best way to learn. And you guys are trying to learn the PPR. So I'm going to give you like a task at hand. And I'm sort of terrible at it, but that guy that we were just looking at it, man, I wish I could make my YouTube videos look like his YouTube videos. They are amazing. Mine are mostly looking at this screen while I talk, or looking at something else. He knows he has these he's savvy. But this is something that it is a short, quick overview of all 4 domains, but it is out of date. Not all of it. Piaget's theory of cognitive development, this maturation, like all of these theories of human growth and development that we utilize in our planning. This is domain 1 in the beginning. Domain 1 in the front. Technology is a huge, much larger section than this now. Diversity, also a larger section, and it expands to more. And so I would utilize this document as a, and I'm gonna, if I have time, try to start doing it as well, because any good teacher needs to have some sort of example. But this is my horrific example. But I would like for you to try to, these highlighted areas are still biggest concerns, like the technology, diversity, but they need to be expanded on. So use this as a template and expand on those ideas in these areas, and then just focus on those. I think you'll be fine the next time around, just with the test taking skills. And then expanding on these models, like the instructional model. We just talked about one right now. The best way, universal design for learning, is a type of instructional model. And we utilize it in class. There are other instructional models, and the UDL, what it does is it sort of provides a little bit of time for direct instruction, but it forces you to push the kids out into a student-centered activity, something that where you're facilitating and you're not directly sort of pouring knowledge into their brains. And speaking of pouring knowledge, I was looking up an article that I wanted to look over with you guys regarding Piaget's theories. And so I just would like to go over. Does anybody remember Piaget or remember how he even came up with his theories of stages of development? And his cognitive theory is actually really, really interesting. And I think it's important for us to discuss it so that you guys have a solid understanding of how we utilize what he sort of learned in our planning. And so Piaget's theory of cognitive development suggests that intelligence changes as the child grows. A child's cognitive development is not just about acquiring knowledge. The child has to develop or construct a mental model of the world. And this article does a good job of explaining that and how that begins, right? Even from the infant stage. And it does, because it's basically surmising Piaget's theory of cognitive development. And so he has these 4 different stages, and we know them, and they're on our cheat sheet, right? We were just taking a look at it right here. The sensory motor, pre-operational, concrete operational. And so let's take a look at like what exactly those mean. So we have from birth to 2 years, you have your sensory motor. Just breaking down the words, and this is a science of teaching reading type thing. The morphemes here, the different sensory and then motor stage, what do those words mean in there? What would you, if you had to guess what the definition of this means, then what does this stage entail or involve?
Well, sensory is pretty much like the movement of something, hearing, like your 5 senses. That's what I would
Your
think of.
senses, right?
Yeah.
Sensory, and then what's motor?
Motor is actually like your motor skills, fine
Movement,
motor
right? Yeah.
skills. Yeah.
Motor is movement. So sensory motor. I think that this stage, if I had to guess, is about them making sense of the world by moving about and sensing it all, looking,
Sauceda,
seeing, smelling, touching. Yes.
I have a question. The fine motor and gross motor, what is the difference?
Okay, so fine motor is like smaller, intricate skills. So if I am going to thread a needle, it would require fine motor skills. Gross
Like
motor,
writing?
yes, like writing becomes, yes, fine motor skills. So gross motor skills be like picking up a ball and like throwing it.
Okay.
That's a gross motor skill. Or walking, you know, it's not a fine motor skill. Crocheting would be a fine motor skill.
Okay, and what is that topic? I mean, what is the general topic for those terms?
Well, for instance, you wouldn't like, if let's say I'm an art teacher and I'm doing I have kindergartners, I'm not going to make them do a crocheting assignment, right? But I might have them practice in kindergarten putting beads on a string, like beads with fatter circumferences, right? Practice doing that because I want to practice their fine motor skills. They can't thread a needle or do crochet, but they could add beads to a necklace, and that would increase their fine motor skills. So depending on the level of difficulty, you wouldn't have those early kids do that because they haven't developed those fine motor skills yet, but you want to help develop them. So you would adjust a task to meet their needs. Like the beads must have larger centers or circles for them to thread the needle because their fine motor skills are not that, you know, on par yet.
Okay, and what is that domain like for the fine motors, gross motors? What is that domain?
It would be domain 1. You're planning and knowing your students and where they are developmentally, what their skill level is.
Okay. Yeah, because I found a question in PPR about that, but I think I answered correctly because he was when the kid doesn't could writing, like write, has problem with writing, has problem with what else, the other thing, something like that, like
Yeah,
like little things, you know. And then I put the fine motor. So
Yes,
I think I did it. I got it right. But I
absolutely.
didn't know what is it. I mean, I just think that was that.
Yes, well, you were correct. That is it. And so that might be an indication that there is a disability, that in your class, like if a student is past the developmental age, like once you're in the second grade, first grade, like you have pretty good gross motor skills, but if you still, I mean, not fine motor skills, or you've developed them, but if you still don't have those, then that might be a cause to see that there's something, going on. So then you have pre-operational stage, concrete operational, formal operational stage. And it's important to understand that the sequence of the stage is universal for every culture, like anywhere on the planet, whether you're in China or you're in Russia, Alaska, in the Amazonian forests, like the brain develops in this way invariably, in the same order, never to be skipped. You don't skip a stage. All children go through the same stages in the same order, but this is where it's important. And this is where our job gets tricky. Why is our job tricky?
I think it's because sometimes the kids are on different levels.
Right. They don't change at the same rate. It's not like once the second grade starts that they're like automatically at this, at the concrete operational stage. Like, no, they're go at different rates. They go through the same progression of development, same stages that they go through in the same order, but they don't come out of the stage at the same rate, right? Some obviously develop much faster, and then we have those that are developmentally delayed.
Okay. I have a quick question. I don't want to throw you off subject.
Not at all.
I remember texting you about which study online practice to use, and you suggested 240. So with 240, those questions that they're asking, because I haven't started it just yet for PPR, are they similar to what you that we go through here, or will they be a little bit different? Because I find that they're different sometimes. When I'm taking those quizzes, and they're okay, but sometimes the questions are repetitive. And then when I actually take the exam, it didn't help me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I know exactly. Let me tell you a little bit about those types of resources. So Pearson, they are crazy people about testing security, just like the STAR. You have to sign your life away. Like, I promise upon death, I'm not going to look at anybody's test. It's really nuts. And so because of that, people who create resources for the test, they don't have access to types of questions other than the ones that they put on for us and that everybody has had for like 2 decades. They're the same questions and they haven't changed them. We know that the rigor and difficulty of the questions on the actual exam has in fact changed. And we've seen some of that with the Pearson practice test. Now that's the test, that the assessment practice questions that I feel is the best gauge of your preparedness right now, because it comes from the test maker itself. But as far as 240 and Certify, they are good resources to help you learn the content, like what we're talking about, and to help you practice or to measure. Do you know like Piaget's business? Do you know Bloom's taxonomy business? Do you understand about? But it's not going to be at the rigor and difficulty that you'll see on the exam. It's just a review of the content, but not a reflection, that certainly not on the assessments. But you can get that feeling if you take the Pearson. It's $10.
Yeah, I purchased that. I purchased that exam. Yeah. Do you know if Pearson has a resource, like a book that they've published? I think they published one like 15, 20 years ago, but do you know if there are any new books out there?
No, just the one that they have posted online for you guys, that one resource. And like you said, it was published a long time ago.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I wish I had a better resource. Trust me. So
Ms. Sauceda, can you give me access for the 240? Because I think, well, I don't know if you sent me an email about that, because you remember that I asked you before?
Yes, you still haven't received it?
I didn't get any email, but
okay, is it Mr. Waldo?
Yeah, Mr. Waldo, because I took the exam. I took the exam on Monday, this last Monday, and I didn't pass it only for one question. I missed for 3 points. So basically one question.
Oh no.
Yeah, and I really need it because I think there is a lot of question about the ethics in the classroom or in the school.
Okay.
So I don't find like good resources about the ethics. So
Ethics.
I think
Yeah,
that I think the photo could be good for that.
okay, yeah, absolutely. I will speak to them. Here's your code of ethics here. This is the entirety, and it is it? Yeah, it is. So all of the things that we are expected to do and or not do.
Because there is one question that I remember that I think also I saw it in the first time that I took it, and it was about like we are in a meeting, a public meeting,
Uh-huh.
and one teacher said that he doesn't agree with some rights about the some teachers, or I don't know what it's about. It's something like something about the board members,
Okay.
like something bad about the board members, and the answer was the teacher is not allowed to say that, and the teacher is allowed to say that. But it's not allowed because it's a public meeting, so it's something about like something that probably you don't should talk about in a public meeting.
Well,
So
I don't know what they were talking about, but teachers can and do go speak to board members all the time during board meetings, but you have to like sign up to speak. Because remember, the board is a publicly elected, like they're public officials and they answer to the people, and the people are us. And so if I'm a teacher and I work for a district, that doesn't mean I can't go and like because I work for the district, I can't go to the board meeting and like express displeasure or my opinions. You know, I could be a parent also of kids that are in the district. And so my voice and my opinions matter. So depending on what was said, I don't know what was said, but you can, should use your voice.
in a board meeting, right?
Uh-huh.
But it was a public meeting.
Yeah, so you're part of the public. Even if you're
Okay, so public meeting is like a board meeting.
right, a public meeting is a board meeting. Yeah, so
Okay.
they have the board. They're elected officials, and like I said, the difference between the voucher system that the Republicans are trying to put in Texas is that they would take the money and they wouldn't have any accountability, not even to show where the money goes or how they're using it. And Texas public education has a lot of codes and oversights. Like the board is held to a specific level and they can be voted out, and we have to know like transparently what's spent where and on whom. And
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, because they put the teacher is not allowed to say that because it was a public meeting, right?
No,
So
absolutely you are allowed. You are a member of the public community and you certainly can speak at public meetings.
okay. So in that paper, it's about all the ethics and also the meetings and everything.
Educator. Oh, here are the definitions. Like the educator shall not knowingly misappropriate, divert or use monies, personal property or equipment committed to his or her personal charge, gain, or advantage. And that would not be something that any of the teachers at the private schools would have to do. Like they could take the money and use it however they like. We have to abide by a lot of ethical guidelines and practices. And so one of the things, like if they want voucher system and to take money out of the public schools, well, okay, I hate it, but you better make it to where all those private school teachers now have to come to the standard of education that public school teachers have. I don't think that it should, I mean, it's just, I can't. So yes, you would use this one to, this document to read our code of ethics. What are we ethically supposed to do and can or cannot do? I'm going to go back to this because I wanted to show you the 1920s is when he came up with this, and he had a job at the Binet Institute. His job was to develop French versions of questions on English intelligence tests, and he became intrigued with the reason that children gave for their wrong answers to questions that required logical thinking. And so he believed that these incorrect answers revealed important differences between thinking of adults and the thinking of children. And guess who were his first subjects? This is the interesting part for me, because I always feel like my own children are like my testing subjects. I have a lot of education theory based on, my experience with my kids. And that's what he did as well. He branched out on his own with a new set of assumptions about children's intelligence. These are his assumptions that he first came up with. Children's intelligence differs from an adult in quality rather than quantity. This means that children reason, think differently from adults, and they see the world in different ways. We know that, right? And that is important for us to understand when we're planning activities, planning lessons, planning assessments for our students. Children actively build their knowledge about the world. So they are sponges trying to build. They don't have past experiences to sort of abstract or predict what will happen. They are not passive creatures waiting for someone to fill their heads with knowledge. Remember that always. Our students are not passive creatures, and we're not going to come by with a pitcher of knowledge and pour it into their brain. The knowledge has to be formulated in their brain. A neurological pathway has to be made through activities and wonder and question and movement. So the best way to understand children's reasoning is to see things from their point of view. Piaget did not want to measure how well children could count, spell, solve problems as a way of grading their IQ. He was more interested in the way in which fundamental concepts like the very idea of a number, the very idea of time, of quantity, of causality, of justice, and so on emerged. He studied children from infancy to adolescent using naturalistic observation of his own 3 babies, and sometimes controlled observation too. And he wrote these diaries. He kept these dialogues, these descriptors of the things that he noticed, and then through that created his theory. Absolutely brilliant. So Jean Piaget's theory of cognitive development suggests that children move through these 4 stages of intellectual development, which reflect increasing sophistication in their cognition, their skill level to have thought, cognition. Each child goes through these stages in the same order. We've seen that. So here, this is what I wanted to bring your attention to. We have the goal end here. So the goal for the sensory motor group that birth to 2 years is object permanence. And this will sort of explain what how in which we need to help the students as they're through these different stages. Although no stage can be missed out, there are individual differences in the way in which children progress through these stages. Piaget did not claim that any particular stage was reached by a certain age, although description of ages often include indication of the age at which the average child should reach that stage. So we have sensory motor stage. First stage, during the stage, the infant focuses on physical sensations. Remember, he said senses, physical sensations, and learning to coordinate the body, get those gross motor skills, not fine motor skills, not yet, gross motor skills, coordinating the body, the hands, the arms. Major characteristics of this developmental stage: the infant learns about the world through their senses and through their actions, moving around. So sensory motor movement, senses and motor. Movement around the world, exploring the world, creating experiences to gather data, to gather experience so that they can later abstract. During the sensory motor stage, a range of cognitive abilities develop: object permanence, self-recognition. The child realizes that other people are separate from them. Deferred imitation and representational play. They relate to the emergence of general symbolic function, which is the capacity to represent the world mentally. At about 8 months, the infant will understand the permanence of the object. Object permanence, that means that, for instance, if you are in front of an infant, a 6-month-old, and you have a bunny and you're holding it in front of the 6-month-old and then you put it behind your back, like they think the bunny's gone, the bunny disappeared, and they might even stop thinking about it, like the bunny doesn't exist anymore. Not that it's behind your back or that it moved somewhere else. So object permanence is the understanding that just because I can't see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist anymore. It still exists somewhere else, just not in my line of sight. And that's something that happens during this stage. During this stage, the infant lives in the present. It does not have a mental picture of the world stored in its memory. Therefore, it does not have a sense of object permanence. If it cannot see something, then it does not exist. This is why you can hide a toy from an infant, and while it watches, but it will not search for the object once it has gone out of sight. The main achievement during this stage is object permanence, knowing that an object still exists, even if it's hidden. It requires the ability to form a mental representation, a schema of the object. Just because it's here, not here, doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I have the mental object in my brain and I know it exists somewhere still. I might even see it again. That creation of that mental schema in the brain is a very important first step. Towards the end of the stage, the general symbolic function begins to appear, where the children show in their play that they can use one object to stand for another, sort of substituting, right? And playing that abstraction of the familiarity that they have. Language starts to appear because they realize that words can be used to represent objects and feelings. The child begins to be able to store information it knows about the world, recall it, and label it. When we're writing, or for the purposes of the PPR, you're not going to have any questions that deal with this first stage, right? Object permanence. We're dealing more pre-operational stage. We deal more in the concrete operational stage and other. So let's take a look at those, because those are important for our planning and for our particular planning to deal with developmentally appropriate strategies and activities. So then, let me see. Pre-operational. In this stage, the pre-operational is one of Piaget's intellectual development stage. It takes place between 2 and 7. The beginning of the stage, the children does not use operations. So the thinking is influenced by the way things appear rather than logical reasoning. A child cannot conserve, which means that the child does not understand the quantity remains the same, even if the appearance changes. So I don't know what that means. Let me see. Furthermore, the child is egocentric, and this is very, very true. During this stage, it's very me-centered. So if you think about kindergarten, they have to learn how to share, developmentally, they are at a place in kindergarten, 5 and maybe 6-year-olds, where they're still in the egocentric stage. It's part of their normal human development. It's a necessary biological skill that you think of yourself only in those beginning years to stay good and okay. But we're building their worldview, and that includes other people. He assumes that other people see the world as he does. This has been shown in the 3 Mountains study. As a pre-operational stage develops, egocentrism declines, and children begin to enjoy the participation of another child in their game, and let's pretend play become more important, right? Instead of just what they want to do, they want to pretend play with others. Toddlers often pretend to be people they are not, superheroes, policemen, and may play these roles with props as civilized objects. Children may also invent an imaginary playmate. Major differences and developmental changes. Toddlers and young children acquire the ability to internally represent through language and mental imagery. During this stage, young children can think about things symbolically. This is the ability to make one thing, such as a word or an object, stand for something else, like love. And how would we represent that? With a heart, you know? Child's thinking is dominated by how the world looks, not how the world is, not yet capable of logical problem-solving thought. So that's like in third, late second, third grade. Moreover, the child has difficulty with class inclusion. He can classify objects, but cannot include objects in subsets. This involves classifying objects as belonging to two or more categories simultaneously. So that's an extended skill. Infants at this stage also demonstrate animism. This is a tendency for a child to think that non-living objects such as toys have life and feelings like a persona. So let's go to the other concrete.
Quick question, I'm sorry.
Yes, not at all.
Do you have any questions that will be geared towards Piaget? Like something that we can look at on what that question will look like?
Absolutely.
You do? Okay. That's it. Thanks.
Yeah, I think I do. I'll look for one before we go. And if not, I'll make one. But I think I do actually have one. By the beginning of the concrete operational stage, the child can use operations, a set of logical rules. So he can conserve quantities, realizes that people see the world in a different way than he does, decentering from themselves, not egocentric, decentering from the view of only themselves, and has improved inclusion tasks. Children still have difficulties with abstract thinking all the way to 11 years old. That's, almost to 6th grade. So, abstraction happens when you can think about things you've never seen or done before based on your personal experiences. Major characteristics and developmental changes. During this stage, children begin to think logically about concrete events. They can begin to understand concept of conservation, understanding that although things may change in appearance, certain properties will remain the same. During this stage, children can mentally reverse things, picture a ball of a plasticine returning to its original shape. I don't know what this means, but does anybody know what that means?
It may be a
Oh, okay. So
okay, you also want to say like Play-Doh.
Yeah, Play-Doh.
Something that they can manipulate.
Right. Imagine so they squish it and then in their brains imagine it back, being able to visualize that. During this stage, students become less, we already said that, egocentric. They decenter their view from themselves. Stage is called concrete because students can think logically and much more successfully. This is important. This is the most important part for us. If they can manipulate real concrete materials or pictures of them, they can think more logically. This is what's important and where the questions come from. So they'll ask you, Miss Sauceda's 3rd grade class is doing such and such. What is the most appropriate activity for her to use to complete her task? And it's going to be something that includes real concrete materials where they can manipulate, where they're, and I'll pull up right now the question, and it's going to be in their handbook. Let's see if I can find it quickly. So that one, aha. This is a Piaget question. And it doesn't say Piaget at all. And it won't say Piaget. It won't even say, learning stage. It has nothing, but it has everything to do with it. It says nothing about Piaget, but has everything to do with his cognitive theory of learning. So which of the following activities would be most developmentally appropriate for a first grade teacher to include in a unit on the life cycle of plants? Now, before we begin looking at our questions, don't forget your steps, do them always. We mindfully read. Now, what keywords and phrases do we have to pay special attention to and should be red flags? The devil's in the details. So what's important here? What should I highlight?
Following activities. I don't know if you hear me.
First grade.
First grade is super important. We're gonna look for what else?
Most definitely. Most, sorry.
Most developmentally appropriate. This is a big one. Anytime they say developmentally appropriate, what did I say on Wednesday? I think we went over a review of keywords and phrases, and I said whenever you see developmentally appropriate, they're trying to make you pay attention to where they are cognitively, physically, emotionally wise, and how that might impact the effectiveness of the activity, like which activity is most effective based on where they are developmentally. And we need to pay special attention that they're first graders, so they're early child. So we're looking for an activity that's most developmentally appropriate for first graders who are 7 or 8. Life cycle of plants. Let's take a look at these answer choices. And we have planting a bean and observing the stages of growth, reading nonfiction books about plants and creating posters, visiting a science center and touring the plant exhibits, watching a video about plants and drawing the bean life cycle. So which one of these can you bet yourself $5 is not the best answer, and why?
B.
That's absolutely right. B is the one that stands out to me most as no, that's so wrong. That's not it. But why? Tell me why.
Well, it's not really allowing them to get the realization of the plants. They're just creating posters.
Right. And is this a bit above? Is this developmentally appropriate for first graders?
Right.
Here are nonfiction books. Go read, teach yourself about plants, and then create a poster. What?
Right.
A first grade class? No, that's not it.
D is not the answer.
Yeah, why can we eliminate D? Why is D not the most? If it's most, that means they might have given us more than one appropriate response.
Because they can learn about a video and drawing a being life cycle, but it's not the most appropriate.
Right, it's not going to resonate most. It doesn't go, kids learn in a particular way, and a particular age group we just read. I'm going to go over here and it's going to go, oops.
And they won't sit still for that video. It's first grade.
Yes. Oops, that's not it. This here. This stage is called concrete because children can think logically much more successfully. So if they can manipulate real things, concrete, and have pictures of them. So going back to what we were saying, D, and we said D was wrong. It does the pictures, but is it the best one that we got?
No, it's not hands-on. That's the thing.
It's not hands-on.
Yeah. I mean, they're drawing from an imagination. I mean, they're drawing what they saw, but it's not like they have something in their hand to go by. You know what I mean?
Not tangible or concrete. Yeah. So what else? What else can we eliminate?
C.
C.
Yeah, absolutely. This is not the most developmentally appropriate way to visiting the science center and touring the plants. Remember, we're looking at the life cycle of plants. If we go to the science center and tour plants, most of them are probably going to be already grown and they're like blooming or whatever. And we want to see the whole process. The bean going into the dirt, covering watering it, having seen it sprout, seeing it lose its first, go through all of the stages, having them do it, manipulate it, see it. And could you do these other things as well in your unit?
Definitely.
You absolutely could and probably should. You could read nonfiction books with your first graders. You wouldn't have them read themselves, or you read it with them and have them maybe in groups create a poster, but you wouldn't be the most developmentally appropriate. The one that's the best is this one right here. You could do these also in tandem, but you must do, because this one is the best to teach them about the life cycle of plants, having them actually do it, manipulate the dirt, manipulate the seed in the dirt and water it and document and take data down, measure, the actual plant as it grows, how many inches it grows every day, do those types of things. That is such a much more meaningful experience for them. And it actually is the way that their brain works. It needs to happen like this. If we only do this and we don't do this, if we only do D and we don't do A, many children, when they get to second, third, fourth, and grade, will have forgotten it. It will not resonate.
That's correct.
So we want to create that neurological pathway that is retrievable, that is internalized. And in order to do that, cognition, Piaget says our, kids learn in this way. That means our activities have to be that way, especially with those early children, especially when they're in that stage of development.
And then another comment, Miss Sauceda, I remember, I came from Mexico. So my elementary, I did it over there. And I remember that I planted a bean, but
Yes.
I think it's the only thing that I remember. Like I actually remember the glass and everything. And you put the
Yes,
bean
I
and it's growing.
remember my time too.
I still remember.
I still remember mine too. I remember what it was like to come in and like water them after the weekend and have some students where theirs didn't make it. And I remember it all. So it is a lasting memory. Imagine if they had a lot of different memories like that in all of their years of education, with things that are really like concrete and they get to investigate and do. That's when they remember the most.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's sort of how they'll present you with a Piaget type question. Okay, guys.
Thank you for connecting that, because I was like, what does that look like?
Yeah. It's doing real concrete things and having them visualize and experience the things that they're learning, and not just, having them watch a video or read something, like actually the doing of it. Another one that I can give you an example. So let's say that Miss Sauceda is a third grade elementary teacher, and she's working on angles with her students and measuring in angles or something like that. Fourth grade student. Which of the following would be the most developmentally appropriate activity to begin her unit with angles? And so it could say, give a PowerPoint on the different types of angles, have the students in pairs, do a walkabout on campus and find different angles on the in the basketball court, in the hallways, and measure those and write down their data and then categorize them, or have them do like a chapter on angles from their textbook, or have them measure angles at their desk with partners, right? So you have them measuring angles, dealing with angles the whole way around. You are going to want the one where they're going out and measuring real angles in the real world, looking for angles, first of all, in the school building, and then with a partner measuring the angles and then coming back and finding what giving your information back. So that would be another example of doing something. It's hands-on, it's real world, and it brings to life the idea of angles off of the page. Now they're seeing angles everywhere in the world, right? Oh, look, there's an angle. There's a acute angle, there's an obtuse angle. And so that would be the most developmentally appropriate for the way that their brains work.
Okay. I sent my testing scores to you from the actual exam.
Okay.
What's the next step that I sent it like when I was first introduced to you. What was I supposed to do with that? Were we supposed to just go over it and just
Yeah,
create like
look for your particular areas of need. I'll take a look at it, but how do you feel
okay.
about preparedness? You feel ready to take it again?
No. No, because I'm a dedicated sub. So
Yeah.
that's why I know I'm familiar with some of the actual classroom activities.
Right.
But that does interfere with me on the actual exam sometimes, because they do ask questions that you've experienced as a teacher, and
Right.
but you have to think of a perfect world. But
Yeah.
I think that my score will be better because you really helped me to understand how to break down the question.
Right. And that's
Yeah,
really important, because all of these exams, they're critical reading exams too. They're not just assessing if you know pedagogy, they're assessing
exactly.
how well and like a critical reader are you. So
Mhm.
go in there with that sort of detective eye, ascertaining the goal in the scenario, and then identifying, honing in on what's important, those keywords and phrases that should alert us as to what particular moves we should make, right? What particular activity are we looking for? Reading this, you should have read developmentally appropriate and think, okay, this is dealing with some sort of developmental theory, cognitive, physical, or emotional, and these are first graders. So already I should have framed my mind to think that, and that's where I want you guys to be. By the time you take your next test, prepared with that careful eye where the keywords sort of jump out at you.
Also, how are we approved for the testing? So is it that we go through the tutoring with you, or do we have to complete an assessment on 240? How is Miss Christina approving the testing?
Well,
Take the exam.
typically it's a combination. It's 240 tutoring, attending the sessions at which you have done, at watching the videos. And so for me, I would like to see the notes that you take. Like, that's what I want to see. I want to see your annotations with the standards.
Mhm. I
It
sent
is,
those as well.
yes.
Okay.
And so you're that's why I was asking, but really it's your preparedness. Like, that is the biggest measure, because if you're ready for it or not. But so it's going to be your 240 tutoring, you're doing, and you're I feel like you could go in and and knock it out of the park this next time. So really it's just that, and then you're feeling comfortable enough, you will tell me, Miss Sauceda, I'm ready for this. Like, I'm ready for this next time.
Okay, that'll work. Okay.
I think another hard thing about the PPR is that it's a 5 hours exam, right? So
Absolutely.
I think, and when you're in the middle of the exam, after that, it's kind of harder because you're already tired about reading questions and thinking hard, like what is gonna be the answer. So I think it's good if you prepare, like if you're a student, like 3 hours, 2 hours daily, so you can like mentally be trained to answer the whole exam.
Yeah, I use the analogy of this being a cognitive marathon, because it is. There is literal fatigue that you will get, and you can, what you're suggesting, Mr. Waldo, is an excellent strategy to beef up. It's beefing up your mental, your cognitive stamina, because that is one of the ways that they make it more difficult, is by making it a 5-hour critical reading exam. you'll experience cognitive exhaustion, even if you're the best test taker and the best critical reader. So yeah, dealing with some of these concepts and critically reading some of this stuff, practicing these exams, the questions that they have for you, is good practice for you. Okay, guys, I will see you on Wednesday. Do I have any questions?
Ms. Sauceda, just can you open again the exam to register, because my HR already asked me to register because he want to know like already like I'm registered again, and he want me to send it the confirmation about the
Yes, sir.
exam.
Mr. Waldo?
Yes, please.
Oh, I will have them open it. They'll open it on Monday for you.
Okay, thank you.
I don't have any questions. I just wanted to say thank you so much.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure. It really, really is. And you guys let me know if you need anything. I'm gonna try to find some better questions for us to work with. I might even come up with some myself. And have a beautiful rest of your weekend.
Thank you, Mrs. Sauceda. You too. See you
Likewise.
this
Bye.
Wednesday.
Likewise,
Thank
Mrs.
you.
Sauceda.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Ciao.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.